Welcome to Business Plans That Work. This presentation will provide an overview of critical risks, the offering plan, telling your story in numbers through the financial plan, creating initial estimates with the comparable and build-up methods, the financial statements, and a description of the statements. Understanding and relaying critical risks are an important part of the business plan. The critical drivers to success include market interest and growth potential, competitor actions and retaliation, time and cost development, operating expenses, and availability and time of financing. One of the primary critical risks is market interest and growth potential. According to Zacharakis, when it comes to critical risks, the risk must be stated in the business plan, and subsequently it is beneficial to describe the tactics and contingencies in addressing these risks. A number of things should occur to minimize the risk when developing a new product or expanding the current concept. Risk can be minimized by conducting market research, testing the product or service with a focus group, and further testing with an alpha or beta site. It is important to preserve resources while minimizing risk. Focusing on the feedback from the market research conducted will not only give the opportunity to enhance the product, service, or business concept, it can create or improve market interest and also create potential for growth.
Competitor actions and retaliation. Many entrepreneurs make the mistake of thinking that competition doesn't exist or it is slow to react. For most instances, this is not true. Entrepreneurs need to think about how their competition will react to them joining the market. Do not think that your product or service fills such a niche that larger competitors will not attack. If your profit margins are that small, then you should look at ways to expand your business and improve your profit margins and profitability. But either way, competitors will strike. To allow you to be prepared for such attacks or threats, you should identify some strategies to help protect or reposition yourself should in case an attack occur. Competition is fierce in the marketplace. Competitors are also vindictive. This is how business goes. So being prepared for competition is an important, vital part to the success of your organization.
Another thing to take into consideration is the time and cost to development. So there's many obstacles that might affect the time and cost to development. The major obstacles that will affect development are delays and additions. These major obstacles can also be moved in the right direction, so they're
Determining your operating expenses for your business or project is a crucial part of effectively planning. It can be difficult to plan accurately, and it is also something that can increase beyond forecasting. Multiple areas can contribute to growing expenses, and the manager will need to be able to manage each department. This could include sales, marketing, and interest on loans. An effective business plan will include a forecast of total operating expenses. Additionally, a plan should include contingencies that attempt to account for factors that impact the overall cost.
The next concept that needs to be thought about while creating a business plan for a business venture is availability and timing of finance. This talks about how would you secure the finances required for your business venture, what are the sources you plan to explore in order to secure such finance, and also the timing of the requirement of such finance. As in, what is the finance or what amount of finance would you require in the beginning of your business venture? What is the amount of finance you would require after 6 months? How would your business grow, and how would you actually finance the growth of such business, and so on. Debt and equity financing talks about both ways of financing your business venture. One would be through debt, taking loans from banks or any source that is willing to lend you some money for an interest rate, and the other way is equity financing, where you would go into investors and ask them to invest in your business, and as in return you would be giving up some shares of your company or some part of the equity of your company. For finance of your business venture, an important aspect to consider is follow-on financing. Follow-on financing comes into play once the company has burned through its initial investments and requires a new round of investment to go through its day-to-day operations or to service its customers. Follow-on financing becomes even more difficult if the company has no growth to show or no progress to show, and this becomes very critical, especially in cases where the business venture has long gestation periods before it becomes profitable. Securing follow-on financing gets very difficult in these cases. Would be contingency plans for finance. What would happen if your planned sources are unable to deliver the finance they had promised for? What are your alternative sources? What is your backup plan in case your sources fail to provide the necessary funding? Another way of dealing with lack of finance would be to lower your burn rate. Here, you would deliberately refuse a few purchase orders, refuse a few customers, service, and bring down the growth rate so that we have enough finances that can fund our day-to-day operations. And this needs to be done till we find an alternative source of financing, or we are able to secure a new follow-on round of financing to finance our growth. Another less known but difficult scenario to secure financing would be a case of exponential growth. In this case, your product is a huge hit and we have 10 times the number of orders like we had last month. The difficulty with this scenario is you have less than a month to secure 10 times the amount of financing that you have secured earlier. In these scenarios, it becomes very difficult to secure financing, especially at a level that is required to go about with your day-to-day operations.
In summary, the critical risks section evaluated market interest and growth potential, competitor actions and retaliation, time and cost development, operating expenses, and availability and timing of financing, and these are all critical drivers to success. The offering plan is presented to let the investors know how much money is needed, what the money will be used for, and how the money will be used to reach milestones. It is important to secure enough financing to last 12 to 18 months and build on capital and additional milestone financing from those points on. Financing secured will either be debt financing or equity financing. Zacharakis reminds us that while debt financing is typically cheaper than equity, it also usually carries a debt service requirement, which means payments on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. This debt service requirement can negatively impact the business cash flow. The current business status will affect how much financing can be obtained. A business with a proven concept and positive sales numbers will be more likely to obtain larger investments, while a physical product can obtain smaller investments, and having just a concept without anything developed, or a current business with low to no sales will be able to attain even less financing. Important formulas to understand and provide numbers to potential investors include future value of the investment, future value of the company, and investors' returns. The future value of investment is calculated by taking the dollar amount of the initial investment along with the length of the investment and the expected rate of return. The future value of the company is calculated by taking the profit after tax times the consumer services price to earnings ratio. The percentage of the company the investors need to own in order to earn their expected rate of return can be then calculated by dividing the future value of the investment by the future value of the company. The offering plan should include a sources and uses table to lay out the intentions of financing with debt or equity, the amount of money intended to borrow, which are the funds required, and a brief description of what the financing will assist the business with. The table includes a list of sources which will show the dollar amount and the financing type, as well as the uses of the sources. It is important to know that investors expect entrepreneurs to be overzealous in their projections. The valuation of a concept then comes from a negotiation between investor and entrepreneur. The more specific the business plan is and hard assets being acquired from this funding, the better the chance in obtaining the financing requested.
Financial plan. The financial planning process involves a 5-step process. Step 1, revenue drivers. Revenue drivers are going to include any established stores that the organization already has. Established meaning that they have revenue that is usually more than it costs for the site to operate. New stores that the organization has built and has started on, and any future plans for expansion are all going to be revenue drivers, meaning they will increase the bottom line for the organization. So their potential incomes at one point in time once they become established. Step 2, cost drivers. The largest cost driver is the startup cost for the organization. This money usually takes a while to earn back. Other costs would be variable costs. They would include employees and their salaries, office supplies, maintenance costs, and rent and mortgage. Basically, any cost associated with operating an organization would all fall under cost drivers. Step 3, the income statement. Once all the revenue and cost drivers are laid out, you can look at the income sheet. The income sheet is going to show you the non-cash revenue. So it will show how much the organization has after liabilities are paid on a non-cash basis, not looking at what cash is on hand. This statement will also look at trends both for income and cost, to knowing if there's some important things that they need to make adjustments to both in income or in cost. And this is important for investors and lenders when they're looking at whether they will borrow or lend money to an organization. They will dissect this income statement at quite extensive lengths. Step 4 is the balance sheet. The balance sheet is a simple reflection of the organization's financials. The balance sheet breaks down things into 2 different categories, liabilities and assets. They have each area spelled out a little more. Some of the areas include accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, long-term debt, and it goes into explaining that in more detail too. Then you go to step 5, the final step in the process, and you have your cash flow statement. So your cash flow is exactly what the statements, or what the name of the statement is. It provides information on how the cash is generated and how it is used from month to month or year to year. Whatever's on the top of the statement as the time frame, it's telling you how the information is generated and used. So this is the main financial statement. It is different than the income statement and the balance sheet because it is not reflecting of non-cash revenue or expenses. It is only reflecting cash revenue and cash expenses. So there's your difference between those.
So, in your business plan or business project, we have to include financial statements. Something that you can do in order to reach financial goals in your business plan or business project is start by creating an initial estimate. One thing that you can do is use a comparable method. So creating initial estimates with a comparable method is a way to determine costs and future outlook of activities for the business. Using the comparable method, a company will use outside companies and industry averages as a way to determine the direction of their future projections. The company may also review their own benchmarks and goals when using the comparable method. This way the company can determine where they would like to go compared to other similar businesses, as well as what they would personally like to achieve. An initial estimate is just that. By developing estimates, the company can make changes along the way in order to follow trends or stay on path towards their goals. The impact of making an initial estimate is very helpful for each company since they can follow it as a simple guide for achievements. An initial estimate helps with business outlook and plans the course of the year for a business to help stay on track.
The next way of estimating costs incurred in the business venture would be through the build-up method. The idea in the build-up method is the scientific understanding that people make better decisions when problems are smaller. So the idea is to decompose the problem into smaller problems and then try to calculate. Your cost estimate in the build-up method would be to identify all your income sources, mostly the product offerings or your revenue source or other revenue sources. With the build-up method, the first thing you would need to calculate would be to calculate the income per day. What you would have to do is to try and get an estimate of how much money a typical customer would spend. Let's say in case of a restaurant, how much money he would spend on meals, how much money he would spend on beverages, and so on. And once you have the amount of money or the income per day, then you would go ahead and simply multiply that figure to get the operations per year. Once you get the operations per year, then you could go ahead and make your adjustments for cyclic aspects of your business, such as account for slow days, account for slow months, and so on. And if your business has multiple units, then you just multiply this figure by the number of units that you have. Estimate using the build-up method, you would first try and start by getting a headcount schedule for the cost estimate, as in how many employees are actually working. Once you have your head count, what you do is to calculate salaries per person for each of the person you have taken into account or for each of the employees, and then try to put them into appropriate income statement lines. While calculating the salaries per person, it is important to understand that it's not just the salaries, but there are many additional expenses that go into the salary. This can be social security taxes, this can be employment taxes, health insurance, worker compensation, retirement benefits, and so on. And ideally, this would be around 28% of the employee's salary. And it is a good idea to break down to this level of detail. It enables entrepreneurs to aggregate much better, and since salaries or headcount expenses are a major part of the total expenses that go into a company, this helps him to be more accurate.
An effective business plan must also include financial statements. This includes an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet. This financial information should extend over a period of 5 years, attempting to forecast where the company will end financially within that time frame. Since it is not uncommon for new businesses and projects to post a loss in the first 2 years of operations, the first 2 years of statements are most effective when documented from month to month. This will help the organization manage their cash as it relates to income. After the initial 2 years, many businesses will document the financial statements on an annual basis. This will communicate to investors your plan for increased profits and identify what factors are impacting your success. While each document serves its own purpose, it is important that the documents are linked so that they can be used to analyze the health and growth of the organization. Financial statements should be accompanied by a description that outlines the factors that impact both positive and negative financial outcomes. There are 4 categories that should be addressed. The overview section should identify what drives revenue and expenses. This section should also highlight potential risks facing the financial health of the organization. The income statement should add additional details not covered in the overview. The factors that drive costs and expenses should be identified. The cash flow section must specifically highlight collections, accounts payable, and accounts receivable. The balance sheet examines various financial ratios for the organization. This data can help an organization manage cash flow and track growth.
To recap, business plans at work have the following sections within the business plan. These include critical risks, the offering plan, the financial plan, initial estimates, financial statements, and a description of the statements. Thank you.